India has refused to sign the pledge that 118 other countries signed at COP28 that took place in Dubai. Now, this was a huge surprise and a big disappointment to environmentalists and people fighting climate change in India because there was no real clue as to why that had happened, especially because the causes or the goals that were put down in that pledge were actually framed by India, and India played a very large role in this during the G20 meeting that happened in Delhi, a few months ago. So, why has India refused to sign this pledge? Well, there are a couple of reports that have come out in the newspaper, source based, from bureaucrats and representatives of the government, who said that there were a few words that were problematic in their language. Apart from the fact that this pledge called on all of these countries to increase the renewable energy that they're currently building, so have more renewable energy and reduce their dependence on fossil fuels, it particularly had language that said that the country should commit to phasing out coal as a source of energy and no longer invest in building future coal power plants. Now, it was this that India disagreed with because India's traditional stand has always been that as a developing country, we have larger growing needs for electricity and for fuel. And so we need coal and we cannot phase it out entirely. This is the reason why, the Indian Express and a couple of other, newspapers have carried stories saying India has refused to sign this pledge. But as a country that perhaps also faces the worst of climate change in the future, as a country that's among the largest emitters in the world right now, do we have the luxury of saying we won't commit to this? To help us understand that question, I have with me Dr. Narasimha Reddy, who joins us. He's an environmentalist and he's played a very large part in advising governments uh, to fight climate change and to actually do the work that we need to do as a country to bring down climate change. Dr. Reddy, thank you so much for joining me. Now, my first question to you is about this language, about the fact that India says that it's not going to sign or it's not going to stand for a pledge that asks us for us to stop investing in future coal. Do you think that that's a fair thing to do?
This pledge did not pop out just like that, right? So
Hmm.
there were consultations before. India could have forced them to remove that sentence. They could have said,
Hmm.
okay, without this, we'll come on board. So we don't know if that thing has happened or not. So only when the product comes out and the pledge is there before everyone, then we see that India has not signed. So I'm saying we have lost face. We have lost our leadership, third world leadership, by not signing there. You could have negotiated. You could have got removed that sentence, or fine tuned that sentence. You could have negotiated that. But going back on tripling renewable energy capacity pledge is completely wrong by India.
There's also, and we did talk about the geopolitical impact of this, Mr. Reddy. Now, if we consider the fact that I did say that the West, led by US and Europe, have contributed 50% of the emissions so far since the Industrial Revolution in the 1920s. It's only now that countries like India and China are catching up. So the politics of the West now telling us that we need to cut down after they have had their free hand. Is India's response now valid, you think?
This is actually climate action when it comes to economies, countries. Whatever action, it has to be negotiated and it has to be a united effort. I think that's what COP is also saying. Unity, only unity will deliver.
Mm.
So that means everyone has to, that CBD or RC, right? Common but differentiated responsibilities and
Yeah.
respect to capabilities. Now, if everyone has agreed on that, I think India has a right to respond based on its conditions. So the internal domestic policies, in fact, India has accepted. When Paris Agreement was signed, Every country has accepted the needs that we need quantified, targeted goals. We need ambitious goals. But the pace and the weight of that steps towards that has to be decided by the country. So that
Mr.
sovereignty has
Reddy,
to be there.
Mr. Reddy, the sentence that this pledge asks for is to end investment into new coal-fired power plants. We understand India continues to build new power plants. Do you believe that that is a mistake? Could it be attributed to crony capitalism within government supporting certain corporates who are currently have interests in coal-fired power plants?
Yeah, most probably it is the case because now coal mining, whatever were closed earlier, they were also open. Privatization has increased the pace in the last 2 3 years. So I think Adani, which is going to benefit from most of these coal policies, I think that that is already there because we have seen number of media reports where government policies are benefiting this particular group. So, the argument and the decision to increase thermal capacity for the next, I think, 10 years, they are saying.
Hmm.
Until 2030, we have a right to increase our coal capacity because our carbon budget, we have that right. So they are using that argument, from the point of view of a climate action. I don't think it's good at all. It should not be done. But if you are saying, okay, I need time to transform the economy because if we shift or if we phase down immediately, we don't have a base load capacity. So if you have this kind of argument, then your goal probably is going to be different. So it might not be 2030, it could be 2025 or 2026. So I'm saying, from what perspective government is doing is not a clear democratically acceptable methodology. So it has to, if the government is intent on reaching Paris Agreement goals, which we ourselves have declared, government should look at the energy sector and how the transition has to happen. You should have had a long-term plan. They could have built a vision paper and then took support of the all political parties. For a
Hmm.
political consensus could have been built. So I think I'm saying maybe you will arrive at the same, but you will arrive with a much more logical, much more strategic, and much more consensual decision. Just like Paris Agreement, where at the COP level, these goals have been questioned, right? When
Yeah.
even US is saying we'll reach by 2030, people are saying that's not enough. You announce more ambitious goals. So I'm saying the process is also important. Gandhi said, unless your process is clear, process is transparent, I think your means goal is also going to be much more acceptable.
Hmm. If we also consider how much hydroelectricity and how much renewable energy India is currently working on installing, are we doing a fair job of achieving those goals? Would you say you are impressed with the work that India has done in renewable energy so far?
No, no, just comparing the government's push in coal, thermal, and privatizing mining, and the kind of finance made available for that. And when you compare with the renewable energy sector, I think it's a mismatch. So there is lesser attention towards increasing the finance in renewable sector. In fact, whatever plans they have done in the last 10, 15 years also wrong. I said centralized renewable energy capacity is completely wrong because you're increasing the costs inherently. And secondly, finance, this renewable requires a lot of finance, and that finance is not coming. And I believe now the scheduled banks are not ready to fund a renewable energy
Mm.
finance project. So I think somewhere government has not reviewed their policies or done any exercise on that in the last 3 4 years when the investment is drying up. At the state level, electricity, most of the electricity is decisions are taken at state level. So
Yeah.
merely saying waste to energy projects should get some subsidization, it does not add up to the renewable energy goals which we are talking about. So I think government is not giving enough thought and enough push for renewable energy capacity as per its own commitments.
There is, of course, the idea of clean energy and dirty energy, like we talked about, where coal is considered dirty energy because it's mined, it pollutes deeply when it is converted to electricity. So, on one hand, in many of our cities, people are driving electrical cars, EVs, because they believe that they're being environment friendly. But actually, that electricity is derived from burning coal. And until we can find a viable solution, perhaps even our electric vehicle policy is going to be not entirely clean, Mr. Reddy.
No, one is there is a International Energy Agency and many agencies think electricity is the most efficient source of energy. So unlike petrol, diesel, or anything, but you're right. We have point pollution. So every vehicle adding to the pollution. But when you're shifting to electricity, we will have pollution, centralized pollution. Maybe a thermal plant and a lithium mining. So all these footprints are somewhere else. Uh, but within that, again, you need a transition, right? I feel electricity vehicles only a transition, and until we get a more cleaner form of energy.
Yes.
So we should not just depend on go to this, from it's like a pendulum from this to that, and we are saying now electric vehicle policy, it encourages mostly individual private vehicles.
Hmm.
Instead, government could have channeled funding, finance into public transport. So that will mean people will not buy individual vehicles, whether it is petrol, diesel, or EV.
Yeah.
We should encourage people to use
Public
mass
transport.
public transport.
Yes. Yes.
So that way we would have reduced. It is a reduction, phasing out. So in that sense, I think still we need to go for these electric vehicles.
In November, and Mr. Reddy, the US and China agreed to take special measures together to tackle climate change, but they did not agree to any commitment to end the use or phase down the use of fossil fuels. This sort of cooperation between the US and China, do you believe that is also what India might be responding to on a geopolitical stage at this point?
I think now India is aligning with US because US is saying we call in Indian parlance pumping India that you are a global leader. So India is US is propping India against China basically to serve its own interests. So
Mm.
but of course, India is also not completely playing because when we are dealing with Russia and de-dollarizing our oil imports, I think we are entirely not parrying to U.S. Interests. But I think there is still a dimension where India is still, going along with the U.S. interest. So we feel, we should not have that visibility as much as U.S. wants us to be, because it is not even giving us any benefits.
Hmm.
Earlier, between Pakistan, India, America always supported Pakistan. Now,
That has changed, yes.
just to
Yes.
counter China, saying India, you are a big leader. Why don't you do that? All these things they are happening. But overall, I feel what is the gain India is getting when it goes with the Quad? So I'm not getting any sense out of that, because except that we get in U.S. media again, which controls the global media, we get a projection. Otherwise, I don't think we are getting any benefit out of it.
All right. Mr. Reddy, thank you so much for speaking with me on this very important issue. It's important for more of us to understand how these decisions are made. Like Mr. Reddy was saying, there needs to be more discussion, more consensus about how we're setting our goals as a country and how we're making these decisions. Thank you so much for speaking with us on our continued focus on climate change and what needs to be done going forward in order to secure perhaps a safer planet for not just our children, but also for us at this point. Thank you for watching.
Thank you. Thank you.